Welcome to the second webinar in the 2025 EDA Disaster Supplemental Series. This presentation is on the Readiness Grant Path, including goals, expectations, and award criteria. This webinar will provide prospective applicants the opportunity to determine if this is the right grant path for you and provide assistance for assembling a competitive application. Please also review the entire notice of funding and the FAQs available on our website. For a bit of background on EDA and our mission, the Economic Development Administration leads the federal government economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness, preparing American regions for growth and success in the worldwide economy. EDA invests in communities by supporting strategy development and implementation projects that include planning, technical assistance, critical infrastructure development, workforce training, and disaster recovery, to name a few project types. On June 4th, EDA announced the fiscal year 25 Disaster Supplemental Notice of Funding Opportunity, NOFO, which makes approximately $1.45 billion in funding available to American communities that experienced or had major disaster declarations for hurricanes, wildfires, severe storms, flooding, tornadoes, and other natural disasters that occurred in calendar years 2023 and 2024. This represents EDA's single largest supplemental appropriation for natural disasters to date. This is the second in a series of webinars from EDA on the fiscal year 25 Disaster Supplemental Notice of Funding Opportunity. This webinar focuses on the readiness path. Additional webinars focus on an overview of the NOFO, other funding paths available, and on applying on the online grants management portal EDGE, which can be found on the eda.gov fiscal year 25 disaster supplemental page. Under this funding opportunity, EDA is making funding available in three focus areas. These areas are designed to allow the agency to nimbly respond to the myriad of needs communities have to build the competitive environment for economic recovery post-disaster and include readiness projects, implementation projects, and industry transformation grants. The readiness path are non-construction projects that may include funding for recovery strategies, disaster recovery coordinators, or other capacity building activities, and pre-development costs. See Section A2 of the NOFO for a more substantial list. Readiness project grant amounts are expected to range from $250,000 to $500,000. The fiscal year 2025 Disaster Supplemental Notice of Funding Opportunity is not just about rebuilding. It's about transforming local economies after disaster with an emphasis on improving communities' economic outcomes and resilience to future disasters. EDA aims to facilitate economic recovery that drives opportunities for future private investment, business formation and expansion, and job creation. The objective of readiness grants is to support community readiness to apply for and implement disaster recovery funding from private and public sources. Readiness projects fall into one of three categories. 1. Support strategic planning to engage and prioritize recovery projects and develop implementation pathways. 2. Support for organization capacity building to help implement recovery projects with a focus on those that have potential to help communities prepare and apply for federal, state, philanthropic, and private capital. And 3. support for pre-development costs to cover necessary expenditures to get a project ready for investment, including, but not limited to, preliminary engineering reports, environmental documents, impact assessments, etc. EDA is making non-construction awards under the Readiness pathway. Applicants are not required to apply for Readiness funding before applying for implementation or industry transformation funding. However, Readiness funding can help a region by laying important groundwork and become more competitive, for example, for industry transformation funding or other public or private disaster assistance. EDA anticipates periods of performance between 12 and 18 months, but EDA can consider variations of this time frame, and applicants are encouraged to engage with the EDR, that's the Economic Development Representative, that covers their state. EDA anticipates high demand for its entire portfolio of grant offerings through this disaster notice of funding. It's important for applicants to remember grant applications to EDA are not transactional and are not guaranteed. Applicants should take time to carefully review the notice of funding opportunity to ensure that they have required elements and that they review the evaluation factors to ensure the project is presented in as competitive a way as possible. Applicants are encouraged to contact their economic development representative that covers their state to ensure project alignment with EDA program objectives and to seek clarification on technical questions or submission requirements. We will have contact information at the end of this presentation. There are two parts to eligibility: applicant organization type and location. An eligible project must be located in, primarily serve, or demonstratively benefit one or more communities in areas that received a major disaster declaration as a result of natural disasters such as hurricanes, wildfires, severe storms, flooding, and tornadoes in calendar years 2023 or 2024. To determine location eligibility, please check the FEMA website. Regarding organization type, EDA can offer grant assistance to district organizations. These are EDA federally recognized economic development districts. Indian tribes or a consortium of Indian tribes. This does include tribal enterprises. States, counties, cities, or other political subdivision of a state, including a special purpose unit of a state, such as a port or a water and sewer district, or local governments engaged in economic or infrastructure development activities, or a consortium of political subdivisions. Institutions of higher education or a consortium of institutions of higher education, those would be the public higher institution organizations. Public or private nonprofit organizations or associations acting in cooperation with officials of a political subdivision of a state. This category would include our nonprofit institutions of higher education. Economic development organizations, public-private partnerships for public infrastructure. Public-private partnerships for public infrastructure must submit documentation defining the partnership, which contains details of the agreement, including roles and responsibilities, and is signed by all parties. EDA is not authorized to provide grants to individuals or for-profit entities under this NOFO. Applications from individuals or for-profit entities will not be considered for funding. As part of eligibility, applicants must have matching share funds available at the time of application. Matching share funds must be cash or in kind. EDA generally expects to fund up to 80% of the eligible total defined project costs. EDA has flexibilities to establish higher grant rates in limited circumstances. It is important to remember the cash funds need to be available, meaning that the applicant has already secured them. The funds need to be unrestricted, meaning that they are not limited to only a portion of the project. And they need to be committed, meaning that a board or authorized official has designated the funds for the proposed project purpose. There is additional information about match and eligibility in the frequently asked questions on our website, which is linked at the end of this presentation. If using in-kind match, it must be fairly valued for the same project work and not supported by other federal expenditures in most cases. The purpose of readiness projects are to help communities get investment ready, or, so by definition, construction activities are not permitted. Through the readiness funding, EDA can support a wide array of pre-development costs, including preliminary engineering and conceptual design work, environmental analysis, impact assessments, operational and strategic plans, and other documents that will help communities and organizations solidify goals, develop implementation plans, and complete necessary analysis to be more prepared to attract public and private follow-on investment. Please refer to the NOFO for additional information on project type restrictions and consult your EDR, that's the Economic Development Representative, with questions on eligibility. Except for readiness strategy applicants, the applicant must demonstrate the project is aligned with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, CEDS, or CEDS equivalent. The CEDS is prepared by the Economic Development Districts. Applications for the Readiness Disaster Opportunity will be accepted until funding is exhausted. Applications will undergo a review to ensure they are technically eligible based on criteria outlined in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Then an investment review committee will be convened to evaluate the competitiveness of submitted applications against the evaluation criteria and will present this to the selecting official who will finalize grant determinations. To be competitive, applicants need to have all the elements of eligibility, and their application must clearly demonstrate that they have knowledge and capacity to successfully implement the proposed project. EDA will be looking at the extent to which a proposed project clearly articulates in the required impact and engagement narrative, 1, an understanding of a community's disaster recovery needs, including damage and economic impacts. 2, how it addresses these needs, including capacity constraints to better prepare and meet the community's future needs. This includes alignment with the objectives of the regional CEDS or CEDS equivalent. 3, how feasible the project is and how it is likely to succeed. And 4, how success and impact will be measured, including long-term impact beyond the grant period. Documenting deliberate community engagement, budget viability, clarity of outcomes, and clarification of who outcomes will accrue to, as well as how this project will help move a community forward toward readiness, will be evaluated. Pages 38 and 39 of the NOFO provides the evaluation criteria we will use for Readiness Path projects. Appendix 1 at pages 44 and 45 gives the outline notes and questions to be answered in the impact and engagement narrative. This includes additional questions for different types of readiness grants, such as planning and strategy development, capacity building, and pre-development costs. How feasible is the project? Okay. Readiness applicants will need to electronically submit their grant package through the EDA Grants portal. When you access the EDA Grant portal, it is important applicants select the pathway that they want to pursue. The readiness path is in the top right option currently on the application page. If you need more information about how to navigate EDA's grant portal, please refer to the recorded webinar on EDA's website, where there is more detailed instructions on using the portal. Applicants are required to have a unique entity identifier, UEI, and be registered in the federal government's System for Award Management, SAM, and provide a valid unique entity identifier in the application. Please note that you should begin the SAM.gov process as soon as possible. The federal forms required for the application package include the SF424 application for federal assistance, the SF424A non-construction budget form, the CD511, the SFLLL if applicable, and the ED900 general application narrative. I encourage applicants to go to the grants.gov page for the NOFO and download the zip file for the EDA Disaster 2025 Full Announcement Related Documents zip file to see what forms look like and the questions asked. This is helpful as the EDGE application portal is a fill-a-form type experience, as the PDFs of the forms are created in the background as you enter the information. Additionally, applicants will need to complete and upload documentation that they create in narrative form to address the other elements on this slide, including an impact and engagement narrative of no more than 3 pages with 11-point font, single-spaced with 1-inch margins, a budget narrative, which should include details of anticipated costs for every project line item from the 424A budget form, documentation verifying availability of matching share, documentation on the regional SEDS or equivalent, a copy of a PDF showing the FEMA disaster declaration or declarations for the respective area. Some applicants will also have to provide additional documentation via upload, including those requesting indirect costs will need to provide a copy of their current approved indirect cost rate agreement. Those in areas where there is a state single point of contact will need to upload the documentation regarding that. And nonprofits must include their organizational documents, including bylaws, articles of incorporation, and certificate of good standing or certificate of existence as applicable for their state. Applicants are reminded that in addition to the 3-page impact and engagement narrative, they must complete the Form ED900, which also has specific criteria noted in the NOFO and on the slide. Applicants need to address those in each narrative section in addition to what the form itself requests. EDA continues its commitment to providing excellent customer service. Applicants are encouraged to contact their economic development representative to ensure project alignment with EDA program objectives and to seek clarification on technical questions or submission requirements. Additionally, EDA continues to work to provide information on both the disaster opportunity and reference guides for how to access the EDA grant portal to make it easy for potential applicants to have all the information needed to apply available. There are additional webinars on our website for the fiscal year 25 disaster supplemental, including an overview of the NOFO, webinars focused on each funding path, and a webinar on assistance in applying through EDGE, our online grants management portal. Thank you very much.